Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know why Pope Francis considers the Good Samaritan as the best example of fraternity and social friendship? As we continue our series on Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis' encyclical on fraternity and social friendship, we examined the first two chapters, which focus on the lived experience that we as a human family are experiencing today, which is focused on chapter 1, and the sources of hope that can help us move beyond these crises and begin to develop fraternity and social friendship. Chapter 1 is titled Dark Clouds Over Our Troubled World. It addresses the numerous crises which we face in what Pope Francis calls our wounded world. Things like the pandemic, social and political unrest, economic inequality, environmental degradation, war and violence, immigration, racism, extremism, and so on. Even social media, which Pope Francis has a positive attitude towards, can often contribute to the sense of division and polarization. Pope Francis roots these crises in two key causes. One is the concern with self-interest more than the concern for the common good of all, and two, the development of what he calls a throwaway culture, which values profit over people and treats people and resources as completely disposable. So these crises truly threaten the foundation of human dignity and the common good. And they demand, according to Pope Francis, a global response which is based on solidarity and cooperation. The chapter ends with a message of hope. Pope Francis calls all to recognize our shared humanity and to work together to develop a fraternity and social friendship so that we can overcome these many divisions that we experience today. And thirdly, to recognize the interconnectedness of the world and to work together for the common good of all. This chapter sets up the tone for the rest of the encyclical, and that provides a good segue into chapter 2, which Pope Francis titles Stranger on the Road. This is an extended reflection on the parable of the Good Samaritan, which shows up in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 25 to 37, in which Pope Francis sees the Good Samaritan and names him as a neighbor without borders. Throughout this chapter, Pope Francis focuses on the themes of encounter, dialogue, and friendship. Encounter with the other is essential for building relationships and fraternity. Pope Francis challenges all of us, based on the Good Samaritan, to become neighbors without borders, being willing to reach out to the periphery and care for those in need, especially the most vulnerable. Dialogue. The theme of dialogue for Pope Francis is essential. Listening to one another and being able to articulate and speak with one another in a human way is essential for fostering this encounter with the other. And then ultimately the theme of friendship. Knowing others, knowing the others breaks down barriers and really prioritizes mutual understanding and cooperation. The Good Samaritan story for Pope Francis challenges all to move beyond our own self-interest and to see others as our neighbors, to really see the other regardless of nationality, race, or religion. The one classic example that Pope Francis consistently uses is the issue of immigration and the migrants. Based on the Good Samaritan, we and countries overall are to welcome and integrate families with dignity and respect. Like the Samaritan, we must be willing to stop and make time for those in need, for those the most vulnerable in our society, even when it's difficult, inconvenient, or costly. We are called to recognize and respond to the suffering of others. And based on this parable again, we are called to seek opportunities to create a more just and equitable society where all have access to the basic necessities of life and can thrive as human beings. So jumping off this parable of the Good Samaritan, Pope Francis challenges all of us to encounter the other with compassion and solidarity, recognize the inherent dignity of the other as a fellow human being, and thirdly, take concrete actions to promote social justice and build a more inclusive and just society and world. And I would like to end just briefly with a brief quote from chapter 2 of Fratelli Tutti as Pope Francis summarizes the Good Samaritan story. So this encounter of mercy between a Samaritan and a Jew is highly provocative. It leaves no room for ideological manipulation, and it challenges us to expand our frontiers. It gives a universal dimension to our call to love, one that transcends all prejudices, all historical and cultural barriers, all petty interest. So I hope this has helped to explain just a bit of what the key themes that run through Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of Fratelli Tutti, and I hope you'll return again to more Do You Know series questions as we continue to explore this most significant encyclical of Pope Francis. Thank you very much.